Hey guys, how's it going? Matt from Foul Ball Food and Drink here. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you're doing well. I'm doing phenomenally. Thank you so very much. So today, I'm going to teach you how to make sourdough bread. Now, I'm no expert. I'm no lifelong baker. There's lots of bakers on YouTube who have years and decades worth of experience, and if you're more comfortable checking out their video, I advise it because that's where I learned a lot of my stuff. But I was a home baker for years, and additionally, I was employed at the Hazy Bread Bakery in Los Angeles, California. They're a terrific bakery. They're known for their turmeric and butterfly pea flour bread. It's as gorgeous as it is delicious. And there I got to learn a lot about how to make bread. So let's get to it. So there's several tools that I feel are essential to making sourdough bread and also making your life easier in the process. One of them is a digital scale. Highly recommended. Using soft measure cups and stuff like that is a real pain. It's a lot more precise and a lot less stress for you. You're going to need a dough scraper to shape the dough eventually. You'll need a thermometer. I recommend digital. It's easier to keep track of it. But this way, when we're fermenting our dough, we'll keep it at a constant temperature so we get a constant, easy, even fermentation that will come out great. Additionally, you're going to need bannetons. These are also known as proofing baskets. This is what we're going to leave our finished dough in overnight in the refrigerator, where it'll have its slow fermentation, where you get a lot of the nuance and delicious flavor. You don't necessarily need these. You can use bowls or different baskets, but I recommend these wooden ones because they really do the job well. Also, you're going to need some kind of a wooden or non-conductive surface. I use my pizza peel because I have it around and it works out. This is what the dough is going to sit on for a little while after its bulk fermentation is finished. You want a non-conductive surface so it doesn't impart any heat or coldness on it. You'll need a scoring knife. Now you can use a household knife, that's fine, but I like one like this, or a razor blade is good. Something that is used for that tool. I find a knife can get a little bulky and get in the way, so the tools that are made for the job generally tend to come out better. You'll need a little bit of parchment paper. Now this is not essential for your baking process, but I find it has the most consistent and even results, especially when you're using a home oven like I am. This is what's known as a Dutch oven. It's a cast iron pot. It also has an enamel coating. It's the best way to keep a nice, powerful temperature. You want it around 500 degrees Fahrenheit for a solid bake, and this is a good way to do it. Plus, it keeps the steam in, which is really tough with your home oven because they're pretty much designed to get rid of steam. So those are the tools you're gonna need. Let's go to the ingredients. Now there's lots of different recipes and percentages that you can use when baking sourdough bread. This is my personal recipe, but you can tweak it to suit your tastes and what works out for you. I start with 750 milliliters of purified water. I actually use my zero filter there so that all the heavy metals are taken out of it and you get as clean of water as you can possibly get, or as much as I can possibly get. You're also gonna use 15 grams of salt. Now I recommend using Redmond real salt. It's mineral salt. I think it has a delicious flavor and really works well in bread baking. You're gonna need 250 milligrams of fresh starter. Now your starter should be active. I'll get into exactly what that means. We're gonna need 250 milligrams of fresh active starter. Now this is my flour blend. You can use whatever flour blend you like. You can even use 100% white flour, all-purpose, whatever works for you. I recommend using a high protein flour, and the higher quality flour, the higher quality bread. It's completely up to you. Now I'm using flour from Barton Springs Mill. It's a local mill right here in Austin, Texas. They do great stuff. I'm using a blend of rye, einkorn, and all-purpose flour. The rye, I recommend if you're gonna use it, keep it low. It's very sticky, it doesn't absorb water quite well, and it's hard to use, especially if you're unfamiliar with it. Also using, so I'm keeping that at 100 grams. I'm doing 200 grams of einkorn. Einkorn is an heirloom breed of wheat, passed down from centuries, and it's pretty much untouched, has a lot of benefits to it. It's really delicious too. And then 700 grams of bread flour. So our first step today is going to be the Autolysis. The Autolysis essentially is a mixing phase. You're just gonna mix the flour and the water together. And the idea behind that is it's going to loosen the gluten. It's gonna relax the gluten. We're gonna let it sit for about an hour. Now it's really important you do not add your salt or your starter, because then it's not an Autolysis, it's a fermentation. So we wanna first just take our pre-portioned flour, mixing bowl, 100 grams of flour, or rye flour, 200 grams of einkorn flour, yummy, and then the bread flour, 700 grams, totaling to 1,000. 1,000 is the baker's scale, and it's a good place to start. You do 1,000 and then you build every other ingredient off of that. Tweak as you see fit. I use these ingredients. So, got the 1,000 grams of flour, 750 milliliters of water. There we go. And then we mix. If you have a power mixer at home, please use it. There's nothing more virtuous about this. It's really just a process. I don't have a mixer, so I hand mix. Really, you just want to get it to sort of a messy clump, but you want everything to be incorporated. So you want the flour and the water completely incorporated, but that's really all you have to do. You don't have to overmix it. There's no texture you're looking for other than combined. All right, now that my hands are all sticky and my flour is mixed, this is the danger of working with rye. It's really sticky. That's why I recommend using as little as possible, especially if you're new at this. We're gonna let this sit for an hour. That's how long I let my Autolysis. You can do it for as little as 15 minutes, but I think for the best results, let it go for an hour. Now that our Autolysis is completed and an hour has passed, it's time to inoculate. Time to add our fresh and active starter. Now what I recommend when you're using a sourdough starter is to take it out at least a few hours before you're going to use it. Take it out of your refrigerator or feed it fresh that day. You want it active. So when you are finished with your measurements, usually about, for what we're going to use is about 300 grams. We use 250 of these 300. You're going to want to have it double from where it started. So if you pull it out of the fridge or mix it, it should be half and then doubled up. Additionally, if you're not going to use a power mixer like a KitchenAid, it's very helpful to have a cup of water. This dough is quite sticky, and using water on your fingers makes it a little easier to use it. The last thing you're going to want to do during the Autolysis phase, and this is something that I personally recommend, is turn on your oven. Now you're not going to be baking anything, but a good way to control the internal temperature while you're fermenting is to, if it's a little low, you put it on top of the oven and you get that temperature back up. So now we're going to add our 250 milligrams or milliliters of our freshly inoculated starter. Look how active and hungry it is. Lots of bubbles. Good stuff. All right, we're gonna pour this over. It's nice and sticky. Dip in the water. 205. 241, 249, 250. Great. So now that we have our 250 milligrams of starter in there, that contains all of our yeast culture, all of our bacteria, the stuff that's going to transform this mush into actual bread. Now, add our salt, our pre-weighed salt. I'm using 15 grams. You can use less. This is the amount I've found that has the best flavor. Now we're going to mix. So wet hands always helps when dealing with dough. We're going to incorporate it nice and mushily. Now once again, you can do this portion on a kitchen mixer, and that's a fun way to do it. It's an easier way to do it, more efficient, less messy for you. But I like to hand mix this stage myself. Get everything nice and mixed up in there. Now that it's all incorporated, we're going to hand mix it. Now this process does require a little technique. I'm going to try to demonstrate as much as I can. So you flip it over, pull it up from the side, flap, thwap. Kind of like this. And you're going to do this quite a few times. And it's okay if it kind of falls apart. It's going to in the beginning. That's part of this process. You are not only mixing in your starter and your salt, but you're also transforming this flour into dough. And that takes a little bit of time and a little bit of caressing. We're going to do this for quite a while. And you'll notice at this stage, it's starting to be a little bit more collected, a little bit more of a dough. We're not quite where we want yet because we still have these sort of tears. It's not all smooth and silky, but it's good progress. Now this is a good indication. It's starting to be a lot smoother, a lot silkier. That's the consistency you want. All right, so I'm about satisfied with that. We're gonna transfer this into a new bowl. Now that I am satisfied with the texture and the consistency of this dough, I'm gonna transfer it into a new bowl. As you can see, it is a lot more labor intensive to do it this way. That's why using a KitchenAid mixer at home, there's no shame in that whatsoever. And what you're looking for when you do it in a KitchenAid mixer is a nice silky texture. You don't wanna overdo it because then the bread will be too taut and you won't be able to use it. But if you get it to this nice kind of smooth, silky, you can actually see it transform, and that's where you want. So now, I'm gonna transfer it to this bowl. Don't forget wet hands, very helpful. Now we're doing what's called our bulk fermentation. It's gonna take about 3 hours. What you wanna do is schedule in that 3 hours, 2 folds. You want to schedule the end of your bulk fermentation about 3 hours from when you inoculated your dough, which means when you added your fresh starter. We're going to do our first fold in about 1 hour and 15 minutes, and then the next one's going to be 1 hour and 15 minutes after that, roughly a half hour to 45 minutes before your bulk fermentation is finished. The folding process is very important, gives your bread body and texture and structure, not to be overlooked. So this is set for now. What I'm gonna do is take the internal temperature and see if it's right where we want it. And where you want it to be for the majority of your bulk fermentation is about 80 degrees Fahrenheit. So it looks like we're a little low. We're at about 76 right now. So I'm going to take my dough, cover it, put it on the stovetop. So now it's not cooking, but it is getting a lot of ambient heat from the oven itself. Now that should raise the temperature. I'm gonna check back within a half hour or so, make sure we don't do it too far. But then once it's stabilized the temperature, once it's about 80 degrees Fahrenheit, we're gonna do a series of folds and then we're gonna move on to shaping. Okay, so we're 1 hour and 15 minutes into our inoculation, into our bulk fermentation. Let's take a look and see what we've got going on here. All right, looks pretty good. Not seeing any, there's actually a few bubbles, which is a good sign. On the next fold, we're gonna see a lot more activity. There's gonna be a lot more bubbles. You'll see the fermentation like visibly taking hold. But right now, we're just gonna take the temperature. I kept it on the top of the stove for a little bit and then moved it off once I realized the temperature was up. So let's see where we're at. 79, 78, 80 degrees, perfect. That's exactly where I want it. That's precisely where you want it. Okay, good, so that's a good sign. Now, we're gonna do an important technique known as folding. Folding is another form of mixing or incorporating the gluten and kind of creating the structure in the dough. We're gonna push in close so you can see exactly how I do that. All right, so we've got our dough here. Wanna make sure you have your water. Wet hands is super helpful. Now with this container, if I just do a traditional fold, it's actually gonna lift the whole thing up. So what I'm gonna do is just loosen all the way around. Just loosen it from the sides so that when I do fold it, it'll actually fold. Okay, now it's a little bit loose. Both hands, gonna take from the outside in the middle, kind of pull to get separation, and then fold it over. Do the same thing on this side. Boom. And as I'm doing this, I can feel it's already getting silkier. You might even be able to spot some of the bubbles here. It's evidence that the fermentation's going along. So you just want to pull it up, fold it very delicately, not too much effort. Just kind of fold it on top of each other and give it this nice, cute little loaf look. And if you can kind of see, the texture is a lot silkier. It's a lot smoother. and there are evidence of the fermentation, which means we're coming along just fine. Now we're gonna wait about another hour or so for our next fold. I'm gonna take the temperature as I've rolled it up. Okay, we're doing perfect. We're just at 80 degrees, which is great. So we're just gonna leave it here for now and check in with it in a bit. All right. Okay, so an hour has passed, and now it's time to look at our dough and see where we're at here. Definitely got some more signs of fermentation, little bubbles. Not the giant ones, but we got some good signs here. Gonna give it our second fold. Wet hands as always. Loosen up. Loosen it all up. All the way around. Does feel good though. Got that good silky feel. All right. Lift it up, fold it over. Same thing on this side. Boom. Fold and fold. Looking pretty, looking good. Feels nice. It's everywhere I want it to be. The last check will be the temperature check. See where we're at there. Yep, 80 degrees. 79.8, 80, perfect. Great, cool. All right, last 45 minutes, and then we move on to shaping and putting in the bannetons. We're almost there, kids. All right, here we are. 3 hours of bulk fermentation finished. Yay. Let's take a look. Ooh, yeah, lots of bubbles. Lots of good bubbles right there. That's what we want to see. That's some good stuff. We got bread coming. All right, so for this portion, you'll need your fermented dough. You'll need your scale. Thermometer is no longer necessary, but it is nice to see if we kept the temperature up the whole time, and we did. Victory. Put that away. You're gonna need water as always, dough scraper, and you'll need your wooden, I use wooden board, pizza peel. It's helpful if you already have one. It comes in handy. All right, so we're gonna first take our wet hands, gonna loosen the whole thing this time, and gonna dump it out. Yay! Now we got dough. Now the next part depends on how big you want your loaves. What I'm going to do is 2 equal parted loaves. They're going to be about 1,000 grams each. When working on this level, it's not important to be that precise, but it's helpful at times. So, dough scraper, wet hands. Cut. You can put a little bit of water on the dough scraper at this point. It helps. Kind of cut right down the middle. And seeing as I am using rye, it is a little sticky. I can feel that. So I'll put it here on my makeshift scale. See where we're at. Yeah, looks good. We're gonna go with that. Being equal parts. You can just eyeball this part. Not that important. So now, this is fun. So this is the shaping part of it, or the pre-shaping part of it, which is very important for keeping good structure in your dough. So you're gonna take a little bit of water, gonna wet this, and what we're gonna do is scrape and pull it under. So basically what you want to do is take your dough scraper, pull it towards you, and while you're doing that with your left hand or non-dominant hand, you're going to tuck. So basically we're trying to get this nice little dome, these nice dough balls. The more you do it, the easier this will become, but it always helps to have your fingers wet and surface dry so that it creates this kind of tension. Right? As you roll it back, it'll create tension on the backside, creating this nice dome effect. As you see as I'm doing this, it's getting rounder and tighter and looking like a dough. Now, I pushed it just a little bit too far here, and what you can see are these little rips, and that's what you want to avoid. You want to have a nice smooth surface as much as possible. A little bit of rippage is okay, but you want to avoid it if it splits the dough in half. That's just fine. So now we'll do the same thing with this one. Scrape and pull under. When working with dough, it's helpful to flick a lot. That's how you can get it off your fingers so it doesn't get too sticky. And also wet hands. So same action here. Roll, pull it back using the board, the table. as kind of the tension, so it creates tension on this dome. Pull back, roll under, and we got nice little dough balls. Nice little dough balls. Great. Scrape it. Cool. So now we're going to let these rest for about 15-20 minutes, and then we're going to do a full shape. Fun stuff. Okay, so here we are on the last step before we put it in the bannetons and put it in the refrigerator for overnight fermentation. So we have our two doughs. What you're going to need here is some all-purpose flour. I like to use rice flour for the following step because it creates a nice stickless bond between the bread and the banneton. You're also going to need your dough scraper, and funny enough, you actually will not need water for this step. So you start off by sprinkling some all-purpose flour on the dough itself, then some on your workstation right here, and then you're going to take dough scraper, scrape and push under all the way around, and then plop it wet side up. All right. So it's okay to have lots of flour on your hands for this point. It's very helpful, in fact, because you don't want it to stick, because if it sticks, it's hard to shape. So now you take this and kind of stretch it out a little bit, flap it like that, right? I'm going to fold it over once, fold it over one more time, kind of give it a little rubber band thing, and then do it lengthwise. So now you have this nice seam. Now what we're going to do is we're going to fold it and shape it into its final form, which is going to be the dough, before we put it in the banneton. So you're going to take the back part here, the dry part, and this is the wet part here. So you're going to take the dry part and fold it under. And you're going to push it away so it creates tension, building surface tension, which will eventually become a nice rise when you bake it. So you're just going to keep doing that and rolling and pushing. And if it's a little sticky, that's okay. Take a little bit more flour. Once again, roll. Roll, roll, and then one last time onto the bench itself to create a seam. Then you're going to tuck in the sides and pinch them so you get this nice little burrito looking thing here. Scrape it off the bench and put it off to the side so that seam can become final and tight. I'm going to do the same thing on the second one. Underneath, same idea. Bam, plop it down, stretch it out, fold once, fold again, take it, rubber bandy it, bam, seam side up. Take a little extra flour from my fingers, pinch, roll, and push, and push, and push. And you shouldn't push so hard that you like create new sticky spots. It shouldn't be that hard. It's just hard enough to let it roll, just to create this sort of tension on the outside. But it can inevitably happen, so if you do it, don't beat yourself up. And then one last time for the seam. Oh, see? Even seasoned vets like me. Pinch and push, create these little things, and you can kind of pinch on the outside so it's closed, right? Scrape it off, and then let it rest. So you don't need to let it rest for too long, maybe 45 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes, something like that. That's fine. Then you're going to scrape it off the bench, off the workspace. Do it seam side up. Roll it in your rice flour. Get it nice and coated so it doesn't stick to the next surface, the banneton. Kind of let the excess fall off. And then once again, seam side up into your banneton. Booyah. Perfect. Do it once more, the second one. Coat, coat, let the excess come off into the banneton. Now you may have noticed that this banneton is round and the dough I made is oblong. Don't worry about it. The dough will take on the shape of this banneton. Now the final step will be to wrap them and put them in the refrigerator overnight. You want to let a final fermentation in the refrigerator go anywhere from 7 to 14 hours. That's where you get those deeper, complex fermentation flavors. Another point to note is when to put them in. So you want to kind of take a look and see if you got a nice firmness. If it's nice and bouncy and it bounces back to your touch, you're in good shape. So now I'm going to wrap them in saran wrap and put them in the fridge. Okay, now for the fun part. We get to bake it. Yay. So most importantly for this part, you're gonna wanna preheat your oven. If you're using a conventional oven here in the States, 500 degrees Fahrenheit is the temperature you wanna hit. You're gonna take your enamel covered cast iron pot and you're gonna wanna preheat it. I preheat my oven for about an hour, at least. I wanna get it nice and hot. I recommend if you're using your home oven to use an internal oven thermometer, because that's the best way to know if your oven's actually reaching the temperature that you're trying to set it at. Not every oven actually nails it. They're not all very well calibrated, so recommend using that. Mine is pretty hot right now, so I'm set to start baking. Tools I'm gonna need are some parchment paper, obviously my bread. Parchment paper is gonna be set out like here. I'm gonna turn the bread over onto it. Scoring knife, spritz of bottled water, oven mitts. Okay, so first thing we're gonna do, I'm gonna take our dough from the Banneton and we're just gonna turn it directly over onto the parchment paper. Boom. Look how lovely. Look how lovely. Now we're going to score our bread. Scoring it allows the steam to escape in a controlled way. So this way, when it's baking and it rises, it doesn't burst out or bubble up or make it ugly. It makes it nice and clean and pretty. So you want to take your scoring knife. Like I said, you could use a regular blade if you want. You want to try to hold it at an angle and do a swift cut. Swift and intentional. Pulling back to front. That's how I like to do it. So we're going to start here and pull it straight back. So what that will get you is a nice clean angled cut, and hopefully it'll open up. Wasn't as precise as I would like, but it's just, I think it'll do just fine. And give it a little love there on the end. A little more depth, we should be good. All right, I'm gonna take our oven mitts, take out our enamel cast iron pot. Very hot. We'll take our lovely dough, just drop it straight in. Sometimes the parchment paper will kind of impart little ridges on the dough, and they can't always control that. Next, spray water. Spray a lot of water. Way more than you think you'll need. You want to create a lot of steam in here. And the reason you want to create a lot of steam is because that's what allows the dough to rise. If it crusts over too fast, it'll get hard and it won't rise. And who wants unrisen bread? Not me. Okay, so we're gonna leave that in there for about 11 to 12 minutes, and then we're gonna check in and see how the rise is doing. What I'm gonna wanna look for when I check it is that it's risen, that there's the cut, the score is nice and open, and it's blooming. If not, I'm gonna put the cover back on and leave it for a few minutes, so we'll check back in with it. All right, it's been about 12 minutes. We're gonna check and see how our bread is doing. Yay, exciting stuff. Okay, coming along. Got a nice little rise here. You can see the cut there. It is expanding. It's not quite where I like it. I'm even gonna spritz a little bit more water onto it just to help and aid in the rise. Because once again, the water is to help stop the crust from forming prematurely. So I'm gonna put that back in there for about 3 minutes. I'm gonna revisit it then. Yay. Okay, it's been about 3 minutes. Let's take a look. Yeah, there we go. That's what we want. That looks really good. Look at that beautiful rise. Nice dome, nice open ear there. Now we're talking. Now we're talking. I need about 8 more minutes and we should have a nice, beautiful loaf of bread. Yay. Okay, here we go. Let's take it out of the oven. Oh, who's a pretty boy then? Lovely. Oh yeah, very happy with that result. Love the dome, love the ear. That looks so good. All right, we're gonna take it out and put it on the drying rack. Yes, indeed. Yeah, this looks really solid. I'm very happy with this result. I love the rise on it. I love the dome. That's exactly where you want it. And this little crackle here too. That's beautiful texture right on the crust itself. Ah, what a great sound. Not too burnt either. That is lovely. That is absolutely lovely. All right, so we're gonna let that sit. You don't wanna cut your bread too quick after it comes out of the oven. You want it to sit. So I'm gonna let them put this off to the side for at least 15, 20 minutes. Then we're gonna eat some. So this is just my oven rack. I use that as a cooling rack if you don't have it. It's a nice substitute. Gets a little air under there and it'll dry out and firm up and become delicious. Okay, now that our first loaf is finished, we're moving on to our second loaf. Yay, funsies. Once again, flip it. Put it out like that. Now, since this loaf is a round loaf instead of a long loaf like this, we're gonna do a different stitch, we're gonna do a different scoring method. So what I'm gonna do is 1, 2, 3, 4. And this way it should open nice and evenly. So don't forget, take your scoring knife at an angle, slice through. There you go, nice slice. Which what you gotta do is pick where you're starting, pick where you're end, and almost target it in your brain. It's a much easier and consistent way to get what you want done. Start here and bam. So there we go. You can kind of see a little cross stitch like that, bing, 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 nice little square. That should open up nicely into during the baking process. All right, now the fun part, we get to eat it. Let's cut into this beauty. See where we're at here. Ooh, that felt nice. That felt real nice. Oh yeah, that is pretty. Oh yeah, that's beautiful. That looks really nice. What's kind of fun about this is actually you can kind of see swirling in the that's from the technique. We kind of fold and wrap and roll and all that good stuff. That's there. Danielle, just say, do you want to try some bread? All right. Why don't you come on over here? We're gonna eat some bread. I mean, what's better? Warm bread, fresh out of the oven. Come on. With Kerrygold delicious butter, oh my God. Come on. Few things in life this good.
Oh my God, look at that.
Right. This is for you.
Oh, thanks, King.
Indeed. Bread, cheers.
Cheers. Oh my goodness.
That makes me happy.
I'm so happy right now. That crunch is so satisfying.
That is awesome.
I love the flavor.
Ditto. And this came out really spongy.
You get a good chunk of that butter on there too. Oh.
Ah, it's tasty. It's the simple things. It's the simple things. All right, let's take a look at our last loaf. No, there's only two, but you get it. Yeah, that's a pretty baby right there. That's a pretty baby right there. Yeah, that is pretty nice. Now, I probably took it out slightly prematurely, mostly because up here, this was starting to burn, and I didn't want to charcoal it. Because you can kind of see around the edges here, it's not quite done, but that's okay. The bottom looks good. Great sound. It's very hot. Good crackle here on the top, which is like that beautiful texture you want. And that's a nice loaf. It didn't rise quite as well as this one, but then this style of loaf doesn't really rise like that. It rises a little more broad because of the different cuts. But yeah, those are two very nice sourdough loaves. I'm very happy with them, and I appreciate you guys watching this video. I hope you learned a lot. I hope you learned how to make sourdough bread. It's one of my personal hobbies, and I love it. One of my passions. I basically don't buy bread anymore, unless I go to a cool bakery where they make some interesting stuff that's like the next level. I just make my own bread, and I think it's a cool skill that you can learn if you want to learn it. Well, thank you so much for being on this journey with us. I do hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please press like, subscribe for more content. We're going to be doing a lot more food-related stuff. We got some pretty fun videos coming out, little unexpected stuff, probably more brewery tours, more restaurants, all kinds of good stuff coming out of Foul Ball Food and Drink. And I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. Have a wonderful day.